Thank you. There are several programs in the government that benefit people. And I want to urge the targeted groups to make full use of these programs. We are aware of the scholarships available to people, and let me say once again, anyone who wants to study can apply through the GOAL program. There is no age restriction, and once you get into the program, the government will pay for your entire scholarship. If you're not eligible to start a degree program or a technical program, there is a remedial program that we also fund so that people can go through the remedial program and then get themselves qualified to access the higher education. There are also opportunities through human services for women, for training programs there, for the training programs, and also through BIT. Please utilize these opportunities fully. In the education sector, we also announced our plan to write off all of the student debts to the University of Guyana. There are about $18 billion of debt owed by students for the past maybe 20 years to the University of Guyana. The only condition for you to be eligible for this write-off is being here in Guyana. So no other criterion or criteria for eligibility. Once you're here in Guyana and contributing to national development, and that doesn't mean working in the public sector, you can be working anywhere, you are eligible. So far, and earlier this week, it was reported that 203 million has been written off so far, and the number is 346 students benefited from that. So if you divide the 203 million by 346, you will get about $588,000 on average for each person. And it's anticipated that by the end of the year, another 2,900 would also get their debts written off. If we use the same average, that will be about $5 billion this year alone. And if more people come in, we write all of it off in a single year, the full $18 billion once they're eligible. So I want to urge the students who have outstanding debts to just apply for the write-off so that we can proceed with doing so. And there would be a pretty large number of students, thousands of them. In another area, we have also announced in this year's budget the facilities to assist people, particularly children and the elderly, to get their eyes tested and free spectacles. So far, the uptake is very low because we anticipate that we have about 200,000 kids, both in public and private schools, and 74,000 pensioners. So we're talking about 274,000 beneficiaries of this program. We've had only about 23,000 eye tests, and 18,000 753 spectacles issued. Now, I understand not everyone may need this, because some people may have already had their eyes tested, kids as well as pensioners, and they may already have spectacles. But there's nothing wrong with coming back and getting your eyes tested again and getting a second pair of spectacles, because there's no restriction. You're eligible to get this. And so I hope that people will also utilize this facility more than they have been doing so far. Another initiative of the 2024 budget was to give each female in our country a voucher to do a cervical cancer HPV test. And although they have shared out about 60,000 vouchers, we only have just 3,300 tests done so far. You're talking about potentially 300,000 beneficiaries. And we've done about 1%, and we're in September. So really, I hope that more women would utilize this facility, uplift their vouchers, and go and get tested. And so that they can make full use of this facility. I want to, because sometimes we don't, when the Prime Minister's office gets a lot of heat when GPL doesn't perform, and the government generally does, and sometimes justifiably so. But sometimes they do good work that goes unnoticed. So on Saturday last, we got notice from the regional chairman that one of the generators, I think it's 625 kVA generator in Madia, went down. We have two generators there, a small one and a large one. One for about 300 kVA, the other 625, and that went down. Although we had ordered a new generator for Madia, that will take several months to come. And so if we had to power the community only from the small generator, there would have been, without power, a significant part of the community for an extended period. So from Saturday, the PM's office, Public Works, and the Ministry of Finance managed to secure a generator locally, pass it through the tender board, and install it, had it delivered to Madia and installed yesterday. So in a matter of about 4 days, they managed to get that generator procured and installed in Madia so that the residents there can continue to enjoy full power in that area. Now, our plans, in about another 3 weeks, we anticipate that the solar farm that is being built there will come online. So when that comes online in about 3 weeks to 4 weeks' time, Madia will then have about 2.1 megawatts of power, when the demand now is less than a megawatt of power, but a significant part from renewable power. That is installed capacity. So I want to thank the PM's office and the Ministry of Finance and Public Works for responding so urgently to the needs of the people there, because sometimes these things, particularly in the hinterland, they take a very long time to be procured and to get there and to be installed. They have done this. A similar thing happened in Moruca. They had a freak storm, and it knocked out all of the transformers. All 5 transformers, burnt them beyond repair. And within 2 days, The ministry managed to acquire the transformers, get them in there, fly them in there, and these are heavy. Each is probably about 500 pounds. Fly them in and had them installed within 2 days to restore the power. By the next day, the day it was knocked out, by the next evening, people had power back in the system. So sometimes we don't see, and this is a very responsive government, and the PM's office, Public Works, and the others, Finance, have been very supportive in this regard. I don't want to get into great detail about the coastal work, but I think last week I mentioned that we're gonna have some outages as we move the transmission and distribution mains along the corridor from Georgetown to Mahaika. We have to move them off the railway embankment to allow the road works to proceed. And so that requires, you can't work with the live wire. They have to put new poles and move the distribution main off the highway, the new highway, permanently. And then the transmission main, they're hoping to put temporarily in the median until we develop a permanent way of taking the transmission main into the backlands, and not just the 69 kVA line, but 230 kVA line, which will take a lot of the power from Wales all the way to Berbice. So I want people to understand that that may be a bit of a problem as we do work to widen the East Coast Road, which is crucial for traffic management and easier flooding. PM's office has also taken the lead in coordinating a large number of people out of Linden who had concerns about flooding. And if you saw the Prime Minister convener meeting, of course, the mayor and the regional chairman didn't show up because I think they just want people to suffer in these areas so they can claim discrimination. But a large number of other people showed up, including one PNC MP, Figueroa, and I want to commend him for that. And they have initiated some work, but I want to thank the Prime Minister for leading that work in Linden. I see in the local media some reports about the President's trip abroad, but I do not think that the reports do justice to the profundity of the engagements that he has had. And there were several engagements so far. So I just wish to draw your attention once again to the matters that he has been addressing globally and with a great deal of success. So the President has been advancing the LCDS vision. He has been speaking about our model and about its replicability as a model for the rest of the world. And increasingly, people are recognizing that what we have done in Guyana is unique. Unique in terms of the successes we have had as a forested country. No other country has been able to match that level of success in terms of clearly outlining a vision and implementing the vision and monetizing the forests in a way that preserves sovereignty over the forest, preserves the forests themselves, and clearly utilizing the proceeds from the monetization of the forest or its ability to address climate change, utilizing those funds to address important tasks for the future. And we all agree that countries have to adapt to climate change because given the existing concentration of greenhouse gases, there are no choice, you have no choice but to adapt. Because we are going to see adverse consequences from the existing level of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Even if there is a spectacular plan and an ambitious plan to cut those greenhouse gases in the near term, we'd still have the consequences. So a lot of our resources are now going to be used for adaptation. That means that taxpayers' funds will not have to go to the adaptation measures. And a significant part of the proceeds have gone into Amerindian communities, funding an unprecedented level of projects that are determined and selected and approved by the communities themselves through an open meeting of the villages, and then they also are in charge of implementing these projects. And I dare say, if you put faith in our people, we have had more successes with Amerindian communities implementing projects in their own communities by themselves, accounting for every cent of the resource, than when we have used international organizations to intermediate these funds and lead the implementation of projects in these communities. I would say if we had to use an Inter-American Development Bank or a United Nations mechanism to do what we did, we would not have had 10% of the 800 odd projects in the first year of the LCDS completed by now. We would have had a bunch of studies and half of the money being used on consultancies without it benefiting people. These communities have shown leadership and enormous skills in implementing their own projects from this substantial fund that has been placed at their disposal. 4.7 billion in the first year and now 4.8 billion this year. So it's a success story there too. And the president, if you look at his speeches, he's been highlighting the success because this is a model itself, putting faith in these communities to implement projects by themselves. Another element of the president's global advocacy has been the biodiversity, trying to get an alliance going and also trying to monetize biodiversity credits so that they can be used to preserve these or the habitat in which we have teeming biodiversity. We're losing this habitat rapidly, the environment. And the global community just laments this without providing adequate resources for countries that are cash strapped. Many countries, developing countries in Africa and Asia, are cash strapped, and they have to pay attention to more existential issues than the ones we're talking about here today. So the push to create this alliance and to monetize this is entirely consistent with our global advocacy for a fair system, and also consistent with the expanded LCDS, which has moved from just forests in the original iteration to expanded to biodiversity, water management, the blue economy, adaptation in its latest manifestation. That is the model up to 2030. So the president has used his global advocacy there to draw attention to this matter too. President Ali met with King Charles, and in Scotland, King Charles has been very supportive of Guyana. From the first time as Prince, when he was Prince, he visited Guyana for 4 days, spent a lot of time with us. As president, became the patron for Iwakrama, and has been in the forefront of drawing attention to the need to preserve forests. As president, I went to several activities that he organized, and he has done quite a bit of work, not just to put tropical forests on the agenda, but try to ensure that countries are adequately compensated for the work on preservation of these forests. We're extremely pleased as King Charles now, he has retained the interest in this regard. Because although he does not have an executive role in the UK government, but his reputation and his stature lends a lot of support, particularly to developing countries in this regard. And we're extremely pleased that he has received President Ali so warmly and is committed not just to continue to help with in the global advocacy, but also to allow his foundation, King Charles Foundation, to assist us in the new tasks as we move forward, which is town planning, because we want to, as we get more resources, we want to return our city. I mean, not return, because it looks like go back to the colonial era, but to ensure that our city has all of the modern features of a city now, a contemporary city, but still retains a Guyanese-ness, if there is such a word. And I think they have enough experience to help us in this regard. So we're looking forward to working with them on planning, a lot of planning. There was an era when we stopped planning in the city, the tough times. Anyone could build anything, anywhere. People just did anything on the sidewalk because people were struggling around, their struggle was around bread and butter issues. Now, as we grow wealthier, both at the family level and at the individual level and as a country, we need to also pay some attention. In fact, the citizens demand this. So now we get complaints all the time that people park their vehicles like trucks by the roadside. Every day we're inundated with complaints about contractors parking their vehicles by the roadside. You just complete a road, you clear it, someone does that. And the way here, people were calling me, texting me, we just finished a road, people are mixing concrete on the road and leaving the concrete to solidify on the road again. 2 calls from Mycone and the Mahaika area branch road. People are moving their heavy duty equipment, with these iron tracks on roads that have just been completed, asphaltic roads, destroying them again. So responsibility too is a very important word, and there must be, it's not just a government thing. Like some contractors went and cut down some of the flowering trees that we had, flamboyant trees, just by the convention center there, because they wanted to use the public land for a parking lot. They just cut it down there, where we built the sidewalk now coming out of Movie Town there. And I don't know what the police did. We called in the police. I don't know, I've not followed it up, but they just cut down trees just like that on the sidewalk. The things they wouldn't do abroad. These are contractors working for a foreign company too. They wouldn't dare cut down a tree in Toronto or Miami without the requisite approval. You can't do that. You get charged or you go to jail. Here, people do these things wantonly. So I think some standards have to be. I'm sorry, I'm digressing a bit. I was talking about town planning and stuff like that. But every day, this comes to us. And I really believe that the technical agency should be looking at this, not the political people. But I get complaints. I'm inundated with complaints about this. People park a long row, 20 of their trailers or equipment on the side of the road and leave them there. No lights. Someone can just crash into this in the night. They do it with impunity. So I hope that those who are doing this sort of thing, that there's an era coming now that you cannot, if you're doing it in the past and getting away with it, you have to make accommodation. That is how you will do business in the country in the future. And to assist with this, we are now doing some public parking spaces for contractors who can buy space. Now, in the different regions, East Coast, East Bank, Region 3, different parts of the country. So it's a state-owned place, maybe 10 acres developed with lights, etc., and you buy a space there to park your vehicle. So if you have an excavators or these things, you can't just go and put it in front of someone's house or in a parapet. These are very important issues as we move forward. We don't want to take a heavy-handed approach by seizing people's equipment, etc., but we hope that they will understand the need to change the way they do business too. And coming back to the president's trip abroad, he also met with several leaders from the US government, and we're very pleased because the president has, in his United Nations speech and in the bilaterals with the US government, he's spoken about the Venezuela border, the perennial threat to our territorial integrity and sovereignty. He spoke about our commitment to multilateralism, that we are committed to the ICJ process, that we want to have good neighborly relations with Venezuela. However, we're uncompromising when it comes to our territorial integrity and sovereignty. And I was extremely pleased that the US Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken, said that they stand strongly, the United States stands strongly with Guyana on its territorial integrity. So that is a very important and abiding feature of most of our international engagements, to keep our borders intact and safe. And President Ali has used this opportunity abroad, not just at the UN, to draw attention to this matter, but also in the bilateral engagements. President Ali also met with the diaspora in New York, and I'll come back to that a little bit later, because I think his welcome in the diaspora has spurred some unhinging in some quarters, and so I'll address that separately. Now, we saw in the last week that the PNC, APNU, issued its plan for the oil and gas sector. So, as we had predicted, that they would not have much to say, that it will be another wishy-washy document, a document that is devoid of specifics, and that they would tout it, and in some quarters it will be seen as almost biblical, because in some quarters they're already touting this as the great PNC plan for the oil and gas sector. So if you have a chance to examine it, you're not missing much if you don't read it. You will see that in the 20 points plan they have, 12 are about feasibility studies and review. So no commitment to nothing. We will do feasibility studies if we come into office. We'll do feasibility studies and review. We have always argued that APNU is great at doing feasibility studies. You recall the bridge? Patterson is charged for that feasibility study. He is now charged because he took an unsolicited bid and got cabinet to illegally approve it and spend $160-something million on it. And it's really a pre-feasibility review, not a feasibility study. It's like a pre-feasibility study where you just put together a couple pieces of documents. They're great at doing this, but doing nothing practically. Remember Granger, 8 commissions of inquiry. Great at that, but no reform based on the commissions of inquiry, except one, Gaisuco. Although the commission of inquiry into Gaisuco recommended no closure of any estate, they then did this their own commission of inquiry and closed the estates. And by the way, you know Village Voice, and they're at it again. Village Voice, another APNU arm, came out with this, since I'm on Gaisuco, came out with this week. Facts on number of sugar workers laid off during APNU AFC government. It's not 7,000. So they're saying that we lied, that it's not 7,000. It's only 5,160. This should be a shame to say that we laid off, put on the breadline, 5,160 persons who were working, feeding their families, and then suddenly one day could not do so anymore. Had to take their kids out of school, put them on below the poverty line. Many had to migrate, and they did migrate, and I think that was the objective of the APNU AFC government too, to get them to migrate. and then did not even want to pay them their severance. It's shameful that they would even dispute this figure. But the Minister of Agriculture recently had to answer the very same question in Parliament, and he gave a written answer. If they had only looked at this, you would see that it's 5,262 permanent workers who were laid off and another 1,785 temporary workers. So that's 7,047 workers were laid off. They're trying to distort the number, but even the distortion, it's so callous, uncaring. You're even gloating over the dismissal of 5,000 people by your government. It's disgusting, sickening. But the real numbers are 7,047. And he just presented that in a written form to the Parliament. But of course, Village Voice, that's part of this apparatus of distorting the past, will not want you to know that. And then, you know, we've been extremely liberal. We've been extremely liberal when we dealt with this issue, because this is not the extent of the hardship. So we established 7,000 workers were laid off in the sugar industry from Gaisuko. You had another 800 private cane farmers who were supplying cane to the factories at Wales and other places, Skelton. 800 of them. If you take on average, each of those farms employed maybe about 10 persons on average, you're talking about another 8,000 people. Apart from this 7,000 that they laid off from Gaisuko, another 8,000 people who lost their jobs because of this callous closure of their estates. Wales and Rosal and Skelton. So we never even counted that. And today I was just thinking about this when I saw this. And I said to myself, you know, we never even spoke of this. That the 800 private cane farmers who were employing people too. And I'm also conservative. I just say average about 10 per farmer. So that's 8,000. 15,000 people were impacted here. And this was only in sugar, leaving out the other sectors with mining, forestry, etc. I don't even want to come to that as yet. So this is what we have here. So coming back to this, the oil and gas, the 20-point plan. Twelve of the 20 points are feasibility studies and review of what exists now. So no commitment to policy. No commitment to policy there. This is supposed to be a policy document where you outline what you're going to do. In our manifesto, we made it clear. We said we're going to do the following things. We're going to move to auction future blocks, moving away from the first come, first served basis, on which contracts were in the oil and gas sector or the licenses were awarded in the past. We've done that. We said we're going to pass a local content act. We did that. We said we'd review the NRF. We did that. We said we will pass a new Petroleum Activity Act, updating the 1986 one. We did that. We said we'll strengthen the environmental permits. We did that in every case. We said we'll publish all of the permits And we did those. They're both the licenses and the environmental permits and the agreements that we signed. I can go down a long list. Everything, we had a list, specific things to do. We said we will spend oil and gas money in the following sectors: healthcare, education, infrastructure, vulnerable groups, children, women, elderly, and the disabled, and we'll save some for the future. Very, very specific. And we were in opposition. We didn't say, we said we'll pass a new PSA. We did that. We said in the new PSA, we will revise the following provisions, and we did that. We'll address ring fencing, we'll address the low royalty rate, we'll address the corporate tax, we'll address the percentage for amortization. We did that. We didn't say we will review this. We said we will go build the gas to energy project. We did it. That's when you have clarity from a party. 12 of their 20 points we will review if we get into office. Review, or we'll do feasibility studies. No commitment to doing anything yet. 2 other paragraphs are duplication. So that's 14 points gone. So on the agreement themselves, the Stabroek block, they're committing to review, not to renegotiate again. Review. So points 10 is a review. Point 10 and point 13 are same thing. We will undertake a complete review of the Stabroek block PSA, and we will also complete a similar review of the contractual regime of the other blocks. We have already laid out the new contractual regime in the PSA. They could easily say, oh, we don't agree with the 10% tax or the 10% royalty rate. We've laid out the new contractual regime already for the blocks outside of Stabroek block. And then 10, we will review again the Stabroek block. 2 duplications here, 12 reviews and feasibility studies, and then some promises to do what we've already done, like maybe 3 of those. They would look at whether we should have a national oil company. We did that already. We said, we explained why we need no national oil company. They will then look at a skill audit again. Let me see some that are done. Cradle to grave management of waste. They would look at that. That's already part of the the environmental permit. So of the 20 points, I'll give them credit for the way it looks. Nothing here. 0. No originality. 0 originality, like as we predicted. Nothing. And within 90 days of taking office, they love this thing. Within 90 days of taking office, they would appoint an advisory team. They take 90 days to appoint an advisory team. But to advise them, we don't know what advice they will get. We'll get a Vincent Adams and Trotman heading the advisory team again. And you remember the last time they reduced from 100 days, they were going to double old age pension. In 100 days, in 2015 manifesto, they were going to substantially increase wages and salaries. And then Jordan said, don't expect any elaborate increase. And in 100 days, they were going to fix about 20 things. This is the useless, totally useless document that they launched this week as the 20-point plan for oil and gas. But they're under pressure to say something. They have nothing to say. So they will put out this piece of garbage. It has nothing, no specific. This is when I keep saying to the people of this country that it's an elaborate con They write things, it's like academia. You can write anything. You can write a paper, you can go online and write a paper on any topic. You can get, I think maybe AI wrote some of this for them, maybe. You can go and plug in, can you write a policy on oil and gas for me, for Guyana? And AI might have suggested some of this. We'd have to actually check that. But it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything if you don't have experience. You have not run anything. You have not done anything. You can write anything, an academic paper. Running government is very different than writing academic papers. An academic papers always want reviews and studies and feasibility. Can't get to anything in reality. So much for their oil and gas strategy. So at the press conference, they had a press conference this week, and I notice now they're not saying they're against the gas to energy project, but then they're not against it. So they can't make up their minds because they know it's going to happen and it will provide 300 megawatts and that it will cut electricity prices by 50% and it will pay back for itself. So it's one of the supremely feasible projects and it would allow us to start to become an exporter of gas. It would then allow us to have additional gas for industrialization or to do whatever else we want, so create even more jobs. That's the project conceptually and what's being implemented. So they know that. So, oh, we don't want it. Where is the feasibility study for it? I've gone through this. The financial feasibility, even a dunce could understand this. You've gone through this 100 times. If a project can pay back for itself from the sale of even the liquids, you can get power generated practically for free when we're spending 30 cents per kilowatt hour to generate that power. What other financial feasibility do you need? But they're stuck with that. But now they've shifted that they conceptualize the gas to energy project. So if you can't oppose it, claim it. Take ownership of it. We conceptualize the paving of the highway to the Linden-Soesdijk Highway. You couldn't do it. They conceptualized the bridge across the Wismar Highway. Never mind Wismar. Never mind that's part of the LCDS a long time ago. They conceptualize everything. So it's the usual stuff that they came up at the press conference with. We conceptualize the gas to energy project. And by the way, I saw Mr. Brassington in a speech that reported that the project is delayed to the fourth quarter, to the fourth quarter of the year. Now, under the arbitration, let me make it clear, we believe that the delay in handing over the site that Exxon was responsible for will justify just a 3 months extension. And that's what we are arguing for in the arbitration. Therefore, power should be supplied to the grid from that project by April of 2025. If they cannot do that, our arguments in the arbitration is that, or if they fail to comply and we prevail in the arbitration, there will be liquidating damages for the contractor. And the liquidating damages are calculated, I think it's $11 million per month, US dollars. So for every month delayed, the contractor will have to pay liquidating damages of 11 million US dollars beyond the time. So we have conceded a 3 months extension, or we have offered that at the arbitration. So that doesn't mean that we have accepted that timeline. Our timeline is very different. But if they're delayed to the end of the year, then there will be liquidating damages, the consequences that they would have to face. So I just wanted that issue clarified for the media, because the way it's written, it would look as though we agreed to this new timeline. We have not agreed to that. They, at the same press conference, so they've been busy walking back all of their comments. This is APNU. So Mr. Norton said they never said that they will remove electricity subsidy, but they were opposed to the subsidy. So right now they're acknowledging that the PPP put in a subsidy, and it is that subsidy that is keeping electricity prices constant when it should have gone up because of the increase in fuel prices by a third. So your light bill should have been increased by about 30%. But because we are subsidizing, we're putting in about 70 million US dollars now into GPL only to subsidize fuel. Your electricity bills have remained constant or unchanged. That's for everyone. So at the beginning they said, oh, this is bad management, we shouldn't do it. And now the reality of it hit home. They're trying to walk back their comments now. But will they reintroduce, as they did? They had the tax, a 50% tax on gasoline and diesel that we've removed also, that's costing us $80 billion per year in implicit subsidy. Will they remove that? Because that is an implicit subsidy of 500 Guyana dollars per every gallon of gasoline or diesel you buy. Will they do that? Will they remove the subsidy for mortgages that we're putting in? The tax subsidies and all of this. And can they promise anything anymore that you would believe? Because remember, they promised never to touch our children thing. In fact, they increase it, and then they remove the 10,000 grant. And then they promised, they said we were overtaxed and introduced 200 new taxes and fees. Can you ever believe what they're going to say? So they said we didn't do a feasibility study for the free tolls, again, at this press conference. Well, as I said the last time, in a case of an extreme tragedy for this country, should APNU return to office, he could put back, there's nothing stopping them to put the tolls on the bridges. But we plan to make the bridges toll-free. Our plans are fixed, and as soon as these bridges are completed, they will be toll-free, or people would not have to pay any toll. What struck me as unusual was, and a little bit delusional, was both AFC said they alone can win the 2025 elections, and APNU claimed the same thing. We don't need anyone else, we can do it alone. Now, any sensible person in this country would believe that you're high on weed or something else if you make a claim like this. You got to be high on something to make a claim like that. And they do it with a straight face. So you got to be also high on something to believe that. And then we had the AFC itself. So AFC they're an elaborate con job. So they get all of these things, people write up these things for them every press conference they have, and they go and read a document or policy position is this. As I said before, anybody can write garbage. You don't have to believe it. They don't have to believe it. It sounds a little sophisticated, and it could be garbage because a lot of it could be generated, as I said, by AI or people who have done nothing in their lives. But look, when you want to see the true nature of it is that if you have robust questions to them, then you would see how hollow they are. That if you just poke them, your finger will go right through them. Or if you press hard, they will topple over. They have nothing to offer, nothing. So I had asked the media to ask them if they still believe that the 2020 elections were rigged, since they're telling people on the ground, AFC, that it was APNU trying to rig, the PNC trying to rig the elections, and they were opposed to it. We know the reality was different. AFC was the center of the rigging plot too, and they defended it. But now to reinvent themselves, suddenly they're distancing themselves from that past. So I asked the media to ask this question. The exact question was not posed, so my staff sent me this. Someone asked them, do you still believe that the ABC installed the PPP government? And Patterson said, well, we're not sure. Then he gave a wishy-washy answer about, well, they're already there, so we're in opposition, so we treat them, we have already acknowledged that. Didn't answer the core question. I think the core question was, did the PPP rig the elections in 2020? Because if they say yes, that the PPP rigged the elections, then they can't justify the lies that they're telling people on the ground, that it was the PNC that tried to rig the elections and that their hands are clean, because they need to reinvent themselves like the clean hands now. Imagine Cathy Hughes doing that. So, and Nigel Hughes. So look at the question session. Very, very lengthy. It exposes the real nature. It removes the mask from the AFC, the lying, distorting mask that they put on every week to seem sophisticated and knowing what they're about. So another question came, I didn't think it was Cordell. So you talk about, Laura George has been busy talking about the Wi-Fi. How we don't have Wi-Fi in the hinterland communities, the Amerindian communities, and Wi-Fi is a universal human right now and all of that. Somehow that we're discriminating against Amerindian communities. So they then said, the question was posed, but Cathy Hughes was the Minister of Telecommunications in the 5 years under APNU. What did she do about the Wi-Fi? And then Patterson said, oh, we put in 200 sites around the country. Well, what he did not say is that they abandoned the project that we had, which is the hub project for Amerindian communities. We had identified 200 hubs that we started working on before the 2015 elections. Each of these hubs were supposed to have 20 computers and then the Wi-Fi access. Granger took the 2,000 computers that we had bought for the first 100 hubs, and they gave it out. If you go back into that period, you'd see they were distributed elsewhere. A lot of their senior party supporters got the computers. You check back, go back in the past and Google that period and us criticizing them for diverting the computers. Diverted the solar panels that were purchased also for these hubs. They put some on State House and different places, government buildings. So they killed the project practically that we had originally conceived of to create hubs in 200 Amerindian communities with 20 computers each with Wi-Fi access. So the entire community, the schools, everyone could go to the hub and learn. And that we were going to start with the computer familiarization program in these hubs and then later put Wi-Fi. So the kids can use the computer and then later bring Wi-Fi. But we also left under the LCDS $17.2 million for Hinterland telecommunications and access. $17.2 million from the LCDS money that we had earned through the GRIF project that they were opposed to. They wrote Norway saying we must not get the money. She's sitting on that money. So what they did, they did 200 sites somewhere all around the country, including their own strongholds, a couple in there. But what they did was to buy, it was a corrupt plan. They bought these services, the low bandwidth from a satellite that cost us a fortune. And if you go, even in the villages that you'd gone to, if you look at the people would complain, they couldn't even download one test paper. It took them 3 hours sometimes to download a simple document. A Word document, maybe 5 pages, that should be downloaded in a flash. It took them, they were waiting hours. They had to move the thing around. And we were buying expensive satellite stuff. Through some arrangement, I don't know who arranged it, but knowing the AFC could have very well been a side deal too. Now, if they did, as Patterson said, 200 sites, and we have 200 Amerindian villages, why do they find that these villages don't have Wi-Fi now? And they used money we left. They truncated the project. So we got back in office. We've already built over 100 hubs of the 200. That's been built now, physical hubs and with computers. You talk to the PM, office, they will give you the report. And this was once we reassumed office. We bought 1,000 Starlink the satellite dishes, 1,000 of those, and we're now installing them in every village in the country. That will give bandwidth speed and the download speed and bandwidth that in multiple times, thousands of times more than what they did. And then they said, somebody asked, they said we took away the Wi-Fi from some villages, but they couldn't name which village we took it away from. This is the AFC's lie. But when poked, they were all over the place. I think Laura George was stunned. She couldn't even answer anything. I didn't see her expressions. I'm just reading from what my staff, because I can't bear to look at these people lying. So they just give me the notes of what took place at the press conference. But this is when you examine the true nature. They can read a whole long UN declaration on Wi-Fi, a long thing, UN declaration, and we will put Wi-Fi in your ear, in your nose when we get into office, everywhere else. But you were there before, you couldn't do anything. Now you killed the project we have, and you're shamelessly coming to talk about Wi-Fi in Amerindian communities like pit latrines. So that was one of the stuff. And then I think they Kaicho News and the AFC, they shared the questions before to them. They gave them some softball questions on the oil and gas, and almost the answers were prepared. I wouldn't doubt it if there was a major collaboration between Pato and the Kaicho News. And there was some silly thing, the PPP secretly changed the, they asked me that here too, that the PPP secretly changed the LISA and Payara projects to reduce the obligations of the oil and gas company. Not a word that we plan that's not true. That's not true. And secondly, that we are going with legislation that I've explained 100 times that will expand, make by law the responsibility, the oil and gas companies as well as those transporting fuel through our waters liable for any environmental damage they do to Guyana. First of all, to clean up, fully liable for cleanup costs, as well as compensation for those who are affected by any potential spill. We've outlined it. We have the draft legislation. We said as soon as we come out of recess, we are passing that. That will overtake any guarantee that you have. Because right now, if a tanker comes here and there's an oil spill, there's no recourse. They don't have a guarantee. Now, they could just file for bankruptcy elsewhere or do something or just sail out of our waters. And we have no recourse. So we said we'd correct it. And then to say that the PPP secretly signed an agreement and ask Patterson with Nigel Hughes there, sitting there. Can you imagine the audacity of this, the farcical nature of it? These were the people who signed the 2016 agreement secretly that has put us in this situation. These were the people who hid the signing bonus for 1 year and then said they thought it was a gift. And now talking about secrecy in the environmental permit and the license. Every one of those that we sign, every environmental permit and license that we signed since we got into office, we publish them. How could they be secret and we publish them? So they got to be coordinating there. And somebody asked again, so they're gone with the pass rate for the interior. And this shows hollowness again. How much persons from Region 9 pass the CXC? So when asked by a reporter, I don't know which reporter, what about the 2015 to 2020 period when you were in government? We don't know that as yet. It could have been a low pass rate, but they don't know because that info has not been released as yet. But we are talking about 2024 pass. This is the shallowness of people like Nigel Hughes and the others. They get these little prepared things and go around there, but because it's never done this way. This is not a criminal case in the court where you can prep the witness to lie or anything like that. Here, I said they will find politics a very different environment because you get questioned. That's why some people hide from the media. They get questioned. And you tell a lie, and then you have to answer follow-ups. And the follow-up questions are the ones that expose how shallow they are or disingenuous they are. And I seen they're getting great review from the Starbuck News. The Starbuck News published the whole list of Pitla trains in the country. A big survey. Now, Priya Manikchan, I don't know why she has to do all survey of Pitla trains. We have other serious things to do too. But, you know, this obsession with Pitla trains all the time, it boggles my mind about, look at the amount of things that we have to fix in this country. This obsession here. So it's almost surreal, these press conferences that I look at. So since I'm at it, and Norton spoke also, that's just from the press conferences that I saw. And I'm just dealing with the question and answer because it's fun to read how shallow they are. And so Norton, I think, is running a bit scared about this probe. Remember Granger trying to probe the trouble period. So so I think after my last press conference, the PNC is a bit scared, and some elements in the AFC, that their wrongdoing at the political level would be exposed by this commission of inquiry. You know, there had to be a real reason why Granger promised this in opposition and did 8 other commissions of inquiry and didn't touch this one. And this one was supposed to prove that there were death squads under the PPP, that Jagdeo was personally killing people and probably eating their flesh, everything else as a cannibal, every accusation under the sun they had in the period running up. And this was supposed to be the mother of all inquiries. So he took Lindo Creek, took Pat Trotman's father, was the sole commissioner, Raphael Trotman's father. Now you're doing a commission, an impartial commission of inquiry. You got a minister's father is the sole commissioner and did one on Lindo Creek and blamed the security forces. But he couldn't do all that they promised. Remember the run-up to the 2015 elections, and from the whole period running up to 2011, extrajudicial killing. Even now, Rickford Bork, the madman, has elevated the numbers. So I think we're coming to crunch time now. So they can come and present to the COI all the facts they have about extrajudicial killing and death squads and my culpability and everything else. But I pointed out that we know of their involvement. We have 2 persons who are members of the PNC. One was the Chief of Staff of the Army, and one was Commissioner of Police in that very same period. In fact, 3 of them. 3 of them. Collins, Gary Bess, and Felix. They were in the police and army. They have to say what was their role too, because they have the constitutional mandate to keep people safe. At that time as president, the police had full reign to operate, but we can tell some stories how they diverted attention from the bandits and how this information came from the very top in these agencies. How the weapons in the army, or weapons issued to the PNC in the 70s that never made it back into the armory of the GDF, how they were found on some of the bandits in that period. Weapons that disappeared in the 70s. If you want to find out a bit more about that, look at the Commission of Inquiry into the Walter Rodney murder. And that Commission of Inquiry will tell you about those weapons that left the army, went to the PNC and never returned. Political party, but they kept surfacing in that period. So a lot could be said about that period, and they can come and present everything that they want and make it public. It will be a public commission of inquiry. So if you have people who they know about the death squads and who are controlling death squads and all of that, they can make this available. But this is a way of get a racist tool to say that the PPP killed a number of people. So I'm going to start circulating. So something here. This is, I got them to print it out. This is the Starbuck News story. So it's huge. The Starbuck News took every death in the period between the troubled period, 2002 to 2006, that they call the troubled period. Every single death. And they said, we have taken all of this. This is from our records. And there would be, if there are errors, there would be on a very small number outside of this. And this was their conclusion, that you had about just over 400 persons killed in the whole period, in that period, not 1,500, as Rickford Burke is saying and the others, and 2,000 and 5,000, 400 persons. 151 were murdered by the bandits, supported by APNU, the same people who they were saying were freedom fighters and Nigel Hughes was defending. 239 killed during confrontation with police and in unexplained circumstances, and 30 security officers. That's how it was made up. The numbers of 400 odd in that period. That was the breakdown. And so this was detailed research done by a newspaper of every death in 4 years and how it took place. They have each person and the circumstances under which they died. And there are a couple of people here who did not die, who are still alive. And also, Anil Nandalal told me, the guy who got electrocuted for plucking chicken in Annandale ended up on this list. So that's what he said to me. So the thing is that this is the fact. It was a detailed report done, every person's picture in 4 years and how they died. But the media doesn't focus on this. Every week, Rickford Burke, now it's 1,500 got killed. 1,500 had gone to now. This is the lie that they told to many Afro-Guyanese communities in the bottom houses, that we had death squads killing people and thousands of young black kids who were killed by the PPP government because we hated them. And all of that, the lies that they told, the racism. But here are the facts. And so this is what they're fearful of. they're fearful of. So that's why Norton said, oh, they will not accept any probe done by the PPP. He's already conditioning people's minds. So he can keep using his 1,500 number. He could keep using that when the communities, when they make speeches. That's what they want to do. But the sensible people in this country, and I hope we have enough sensible people, will go to this. This has gone into PDF format, and we will put a covering note, and it will be on the party's website, so that, and other places, so people can themselves review this. They can themselves review this. The sensible ones would do it. Those who are intent on distortion will not want it done. So we're going to be tackling this matter also. I spoke to you earlier about the carbon credit and how good it was doing. Look at the APA still opposed it. Starbuck News does not give the communities. You do a real disservice to the tens of thousands of Amerindians who are benefiting from this project. Every single Tushao had a chance to opt out of this program. And they all opted in, including the one who said he would opt out, Mr. Hastings, who is, I think, related to Don Hastings from the PNC. They all opted in for this project. And look, APA in New York this week trying to kill the program again. But they will kill it because APA is the PNC, an extension of the PNC. Laura George has demonstrated that. She's gone to AFC, but I think really they're pro-PNC. But regardless, they'll have their work by distortion. So this is what, and every time it gets, they have a special place in Starbuck's heart to distort everything in our history, like the GHRA, etc. Never mind they've been ripping off the people, Amerindians, forever. All the 20 million US that they receive in funding from abroad never went to indigenous people. Went to fund fat salaries for a few people, and I heard it's a family and friend business there. We have to get a job in that entity. So another week of that sort of thing. On procurement, so earlier this week I met with all the permanent secretaries. I met with the REOs and those responsible for procurement in the Army, in the police, in the public corporations and other agencies. And I made it clear that we will not countenance any departure from the Procurement Act and the regulations that form part of the legislation governing procurement in Guyana. I pointed out to them that we understood the challenges they face. Because when you think of scale of activities, say a permanent secretary in the past, say under APNU, would have been in a sleepy old maybe a sleepy building with very little to do. Here, a permanent secretary and an REO is administering maybe 300 projects, when in the past they would administer 5 projects. So it's a lot more work, and we appreciate that work. And sometimes we need to say this to the public officers who are doing a good job, because there is a feeling that we must run down every public officer. 95% of our projects, when you drive across this country, are done on time, properly, and they're benefiting tens of thousands of Guyanese everywhere, and they can testify to this. In the housing sector, in community roads, in other types of infrastructure, they're going well. We do have 5% projects where we witness some undesirable features. And so whilst we continue to go with the projects that are, implement the projects that are doing well, we have no intention to turn a blind eye to the 5% where we may have transgressions. And I detailed the types of transgressions we've had. Sole sourcing when non-necessary, abuse of the three-court system, restrictive tendering in a very liberal way, and I made it clear that these must only take place in exceptional circumstances that must be justified fully. And I said to NPTAB that they must not approve these unless there are proper justification for that to happen, for these restrictive tendering practices to take place. The Act provides for them, but only in certain circumstances. I pointed out about the need to ensure that evaluators do a proper job. I gave some examples where evaluators in the evaluation of bids never looked at the bid documents. They will just go to the bid opening price and just prepare the report without even reading the documents. We had one case, the person admitting, the head of the evaluation committee, he did not read the bid documents. He just looked at the bid opening price and wrote the report. And there was an error on the bid opening price. And that report went to the cabinet. The cabinet approved it on the, well, not approved, offered its no objection. NPTAB approved it, sent it to the cabinet. The cabinet offered a no objection. When we discovered this, we had to terminate the bid. But this is a report that was done by the evaluation committee. The two other persons signed on to the report done by the chair. Not a single one of them looked at the bid documents. You're supposed to review the bid documents, not look at the opening. They do a shoddy job, laziness, and this has this led to wrong person getting the contract. So evaluation standards and reports must be done properly. And I urge the heads of agencies to have an oversight role, but not to interfere with the evaluation, because the evaluation should be independently done. We've had cases, I outlined cases where, and this is very difficult to detect, sometimes 2 or 3 persons in a single family incorporate different companies and they're bidding at the same time on the same project. So you don't know who they are and their relatives. They may even have a different name, surname, but they are related to each other. It's harder to detect, but I urge them to be vigilant on this. We've had cases where the ministries, knowing that projects are going into a default or a delayed, they will not even issue a letter of warning. Better contract administration or good contract administration would necessitate that you warn contractors early so that when you impose liquidating damages, they don't cry foul. That needs to be done. So I outlined almost all. If you have a chance, because I saw it was widely reported, if you have a chance to look at it, I've seen it adequately reported. Even solicitation of bribes and approval of shoddy work by some engineers, etc. So we expect those people. And in that room, you had people who deal with about maybe 95, 97% of all public procurement. So they know that there is a zero tolerance policy for any departure from the procurement laws. And they know what the consequences are for that, should that happen. Now, I've seen a number of things surfacing. So I've seen today, like in the Starbuck News, they have a detailed thing from Nigel Hughes about the Schoonard Road. So this road was awarded about 2 years ago. And I called NPTAB and said, can you find me the evaluation report? I spoke with Ashni Singh and I said to him, I can't get this was 1:30 today. I can't get the evaluation report, but you should put out a response to this from the ministry either today or tomorrow. So that will happen. So we will respond to this. Now, something of a more systemic nature. So every week, last week I addressed it a bit, and I want to return to it in greater detail this week so that you understand the difference between procurement under PPP and under APNU. And there is a single metric that you can use. So you would always have accusations of corruption. But this single metric can tell you about approaches to transparency versus secrecy in tender administration. You know the regulations to the Procurement Act of 2003 when I was president. First, this was a major piece of legislation. Prior to that period, we did not have a procurement law in this country. We were using some old regulations from the past, from the pre-colonial era, and some ST letters giving guidance on procurement. We did not have a full procurement law with outlining every situation, the right of appeal, removal of cabinet, how the awards must be adjudicated. It's very complex. And if you look at it, you will see how complex it is. It's one of the better pieces of legislation anywhere in the world if you look at our Procurement Act. It has a lot of safeguards. When we passed that in 2003, we then put regulations to the Act in 2004. And one of the regulations here was dealing with public knowledge of what we were procuring. So prior to that, the public had never had a way of knowing what the government was procuring, especially at NPTAB level and above, because those are the big contracts. At that time, the the limit was lower. Now it's about 15 million and above. They had no way of knowing how many contracts were awarded in the past and at what price and what was the procurement method prior to the passage of this law and the regulations. So here in the regulation, it says, within 5 days of dispatching notice concerning the award of any contract exceeded 200,000 in value at that time. It has changed up from 2004 to now. The procuring entity shall provide a report to the administration with the following information about the contract. A, name of the procuring entity. B, date of award. C, name of the party to whom the contract was awarded. D, object of the contract, that is a short description and classification. C, amount and currency of the contract. F, procurement method used. G, number of tenders. H, contract identification number. And within 2 days of receiving any type of report mentioned in the preceding paragraph, the administration shall publish the information obtained on a website. So all of this, after we pass the law and the Procurement Act, the regulations, there should be now, as part of our law, what governments have to comply with, a procurement website managed by MPTAB, and people should see all of this information in the manner. So if you go to the website now managed by MPTAB, every contract there from September of 2021 that we have awarded at the tender board, MPTAB, is on that website. So why September 2021? In the 5 years under APNU, there was no maintenance of the site. They crashed the site and never comply with the law. So from 2015 to 2020, we don't know what they procured and what method they use. Now, this must be a fundamental issue for the country, that the same guys who talk every week about procurement, Winston Jordan is the bastion of virtue now after selling out the land and transferring all sorts of things, and was embroiled in a ton of other scandals for which he's charged now. He's now the bastion of virtue. He wants to see contracts. His responsibility in the Ministry of Finance was to tell this nation by law, every contract that was issued from 2015 to 2020 and post it on a website in the manner that I just referred to as prescribed by the regulations. Why was this not done? So you ask any contract, one single contract that they approved in that whole period, the 5 years, we don't know what method they used, what was the sum, how many persons bid. We don't know now. For 5 years, zero accountability. These are the same people for 3 years who did not submit any statement to the Integrity Commission. And they talk about virtue. This is an illegal act. Jordan should be held for malfeasance in office, should be charged for not doing this too. So you ask them anytime, anyone, Norton or anybody, you tell me a single contract was approved, where I can get the information now, in the 5 years, where I can get the information. Ask them that question the next time. And why did you not do this? respond to the law. Now the PPP, first year COVID, we got into office around August of 2020. By September of 2021, we rebuilt the site, and every single, you go on the site now, you see every contract. So let me tell you what it says. Procuring entity there, Ministry of Health, for example, contract ID number, awardee, contract description, contract amount, currency used, procurement method. So if it's sole sourcing, if it's restrictive tender, if it's open public tender, it's outlined here. So a Guyanese can come and say, look, this one was sole source. You can go on the site now and see. It says number of tenders, it has how many persons tendered, and it has date of award and date uploaded. This for every contract now that we have done, every one that they complain about corruption on, you can at least find the information on a site provided by the government of Guyana that APNU didn't do. And you can find the procurement method used here. So that's the qualitative difference. That this is a sophisticated con job. They are corrupt. Of course, Cathy Hughes would probably now want her name on Video Mega to be on their site. They crashed the website. They crashed it and stopped uploading. So you can't find any information before that period. And they did this before. In the 10 years before we got into office in 1992, there was no audited accounts for the country. None. We managed from 1992 to do audited accounts for the country. The same thing happening at City Hall. You can't have a proper audit there. Up to now, you see the attempt to mislead, we owe 15 billion in taxes. Now, they're gone quiet on the PNC 6.7 billion. It's a sophisticated con job that they do all the time for the uninformed. So anytime any one of them says this, you ask them, where is the contract? Can I find the details, public information as is required by the Act on this procurement that they did for the Durban Park, the facility there? How can we get information on that? You can't get it anywhere. Disappeared. They just destroy all the paper trail for this period, the 2015-2020 period. We are complying with the law, the citizens of this country. That is why I tell you about accountability. And we have made it clear. You think any APNU government would have told the permanent secretaries what I said to them? That we'd hold you responsible? Because they're the ones telling the permanent secretary did not have to approve in Cathy Hughes' ministry payment to her own company. She did that on her own. Her name signing. We have the document. She was signing on the paper. That's what they didn't want done. So when they talk about corruption, it's like the devil talking about. Anyhow, let me don't even waste my time on these people. It's just like every week it's something. And you know what bothers me is that all of these academics and everything else out there, they don't even do the research. They don't do comparison. That's why they don't want comparisons. They don't want compare. Oh, it's unfair to compare. It's this, it's that. We were constrained. How were you constrained in putting up the awards on the website? What were you constrained? Who was holding your hand to comply with the law? A set of crooks. So on the oil and gas, maybe I come to that in a minute. So after I spoke last week about the Kaichor News being a party newspaper, and I want to repeat what I said. I said that this is a political newspaper, and from going forward, that is how we will treat it. It's like the new nation of the PNC and the mirror of the People's Progressive Party. That they should get the same amount of ads to be fair if we want equity, like the two other political party papers get. So we're equitably distributing the ads. And I said to these private people who used to claim, when we asked them for ads from Mirror, they claim that we don't advertise with party newspapers, right? Because it may taint our company. They will now have a dilemma because this is a party newspaper. That can't be conceived about. So that it's a media threat. I think it's fair for everyone. So Kaichor News did an editorial, media threats. So I threatened the media now. And I even said Starbuck might benefit more now since it's not a party newspaper. So first they said, in Guyana, the state media has no such objectivity. But the lack of objectivity is not confined to the state media alone. The private media has at times, and when addressing certain issues, been equally guilty of being blinkered in their reporting and commentaries. This is coming from Kaichor News. Private media being blinkered in reporting and commentaries. It is not unusual to find issues in which the private media demonstrate a one-sided and jaundiced approach to reporting. Kaichor News talking about one-sided and jaundiced reporting. Some have been known to report on issues without seeking to represent all sides of the story. I nearly fell off my chair when I read this, coming from Kaichor News, criticizing the private media for being jaundiced in their reported, one-sided, nor lacking objectivity. Can you believe this? That's why I said we live in a surreal country. You know, it just some unstatesmanlike, crass display of behavior because I said what I said last week. Now, his contention that the publisher of Kaichor News, Mr. Glenal, has entered the political arena owing to some spur of the moment comment he made on one of the recent editions of his radio program. So now I don't know what they mean by that. Glenal saying he didn't actually say this, that he put his foot in his mouth. What do they mean by that? But I thought this was quite clear.
We will not allow that to continue, my friend.
Let me, if you can hear this, let me go back. So I want to play it for you. So this is a spur of the moment thing. I just have.
We will not allow that to continue, my friend. I am entering the presidential race come 2025.
Yeah, I wonder who will be clapping here though. Goes on.
Just to put a stop to this insanity, your government and the opposition
Full lunatic.
doing to the people of this country with their resources.
You heard that?
Look out.
So that's not a spur moment. He has announced that he is entering the presidential race. But he sees now that the private sector will have a hard time advertising in a party newspaper. And I think he is worried about losing money now. And I hope that those in the government who are looking on, that they look at this newspaper now too, because Mera is going to have a big issue with the government very soon. Because we demand parity, and New Nation may also demand the same thing. I hope Norton is watching, so that he could also say, I want the same amount of ads from the state. So this was not like a spur of the moment thing, and it was not unstatesmanlike. All I'm asking for to be treated fairly and with parity. Last week, in my when I was speaking about the Kanji and Kaichor block, I think Kemal brought this to my notice, that it may be, I saw a headline that we repossessed it from Guyana Times. So maybe that's the impression I created, that we repossess when I said it's back in our control. What I meant was that there was a first relinquishment. There should have been a second relinquishment of another, first 20%, 25%, and then they had the force majeure. So soon, in fact, that should have been done by now, and then by 2026, I think that would be the block, Kanji block, would be back with the government should there be no progress on announcing a development. I also saw someone from Exxon in responding to a question saying that they're waiting to exit the Kaichor block, but they have not gotten the approval from the government as yet. Now, I asked the ministry about this, and they sent me a letter that they wrote to Mr. Routledge about it says here, reference is made to your company's application received on October 20th, 2023, requesting approval for the transfer of interest in the Kaichor Block Petroleum Exploration License and the subsequent submission of additional documents on the 25th of January 2024. Please be guided that further to our review of submitted documents, the Ministry of Natural Resources has found that some additional information is needed prior to closing out this process. This information is detailed in the attached list for your submission. And they have all of this. He is supposed to submit further. Has not done so as yet. 3 pages. So we are awaiting additional information from in the review before the approval is given. So they made it seem as though we're holding this up. We're not holding this up. It's Exxon has not submitted the additional information to complete the review. That's the position of the ministry. I asked them today, and they said, no, on 16 additional bits of information they need to complete that review. So, let me see. There anything else? No, nothing much. Thank you.
Mr. Jagdeo, Danish Shabal, Damara Waves. Sir, could you say what exactly is the status of the negotiations with the companies that expressed an interest in the offshore blocks? I gathered that there are some negotiations going along with timelines. And secondly, even today, you have dealt extensively with the issue of corruption and procurement. You also had a meeting recently with the public officers. And prior to that, you had also dealt with the issue. On Tuesday, the Attorney General was, on a majority of his program, 90–70% dealt with the issue. What is the PPP seeing in terms of any surveys or reviews that corruption can indeed be a deciding factor for the next elections? And thirdly, could you say what influenced your decision to get involved in the matter concerning Mr. Tom?
Okay, let me start with the issue of corruption. So first of all, we need to ensure that the government's position is in the public domain, and that the public officers, those responsible for administering almost 100% of our budget, 97% of the budget, they were in that room, that they are aware as to how we see the issue of public procurement proceeding. And that's why we made it clear about the fealty to the procurement laws. We made it clear that we will not countenance departure from the act or the regulations or bidding documents, and that even if they have to adjust bidding documents provided for by law, they have to seek prior approval. We made it clear because there have been claims about sole sourcing and shoddy evaluation and all of these issues. They've been in the public domain, our position on this matter. I think it's known now in the country what our positions are on issues surrounding public procurement. A government should do this because somehow in a vacuum it makes it seem as though the opposition has a motive to make it seem as though we're tolerant of these practices. And that's why I spoke thus. Now, I recognize that part of the opposition does not have a great track record. And it has a mobilizing tool that it used historically to its advantage, but in the new circumstances is giving it diminishing returns. That is the racism. So they can't turn to it with the same sort of potency as in the past. So the one thing they have to do is to go back to something that worked for them well in the 2015 period. That is to make everything seem corrupt. For them, everyone is corrupt, and all 100% of government projects are corruptly done. So we have to point out the differences and what steps we took to address corruption and what steps we're taking to address corruption. And we have to fight off this before, which we did not do enough in 2015. We allow it to be, people would understand that these guys are talking nonsense. And no, maybe people believed it. So now we're going to respond every time to the allegations. When you don't respond to these allegations, it's a tough task, laborious. Every week you got to do it. But people believe it's truthful if you don't respond to allegations. And therefore, we've committed ourselves not to allow the repeat. Remember, in 2015, they were supposed to do, they did all sorts of things. They established SARA, SOKU, they did audits. Look how many audits they did. 45 audits, spent hundreds of millions of dollars on audit to prove corruption. How many cases did they have? Very little. They were claiming we are losing $50 billion a year through corruption. And tell me, in the 5 years, you couldn't charge a couple of people for this corruption? The $50 billion per year that we were supposed to be stealing in 2015? So they're back at it again. They're back at it because they can't use the track record or the racism so much. And so we as a political party and as a government, we have a duty to fight this off. But we also have a duty to point out that to the people, or to make it clear what our line is. And now you know what our line is, from the government to the public officers. I didn't do it behind secret doors and wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I did it openly. I did it openly. And secondly, we need to point out the qualitative differences with the approach to procurement. I just pointed one out to you about the maintained public information available now. You can't know what took place in 2015 to 2020 with public procurement because there's no public information on it. You have from 2021 to now all the contracts awarded, and you know the form of tender, how many persons bid, the sum, what currency, which ministry, which contractor got it, because it's currently sitting on a website that we put there. So that's our approach to that matter. The first one is
negotiations with the oil companies
okay.
on
I
the
would
time
prefer
frames?
if you call the ministry. They're engaged more on a, because this is ongoing. We've had a lot of the people who put in offers have had difficulties raising their requisite capital or securing the partners to come into these blocks, to subscribe, one, to the signing bonus, and secondly, to lay out a fully funded plan as to how they would develop the block. And we made those as some of the important prerequisites for getting a block. You have to pay a signing bonus, and you have to lay out your plan. You can't just take a block and sit on it and hope to flip it. You have to tell us how much you're going to spend and timelines. And if you don't do that, there are penalties to it. I think some of the people most of them have had a hard time being able to meet those stringent requirements of the auction.
Is government willing, though, to flex in the timelines?
We may be, I said, on the non-fiscal part, I explained that already. We may be able to be a bit more flexible on timelines and all of that issue if we determine that these are affecting our competitiveness. But we had an international firm look at the competitiveness of our regime, and they guided us before we passed the new regime in the new PSA for future blocks. And not just future blocks, because all other blocks, including the Kanji and Kaichor, etc., they all have to now subscribe to the new PSA. So we're prepared to look at that again. I already expressed that position publicly. But please, on where with specific bidder, I would not have that information. The ministry should be able to tell you that in greater detail. The third issue is, I think it was unnecessary. This gentleman served the country well and continues to serve the country at a very high standard there in the Borough School of Art. And when we saw the information, I saw the information that he had resigned. And the reason for which he resigned, I thought it warranted my intervention. And I called him and said, we'd like you to withdraw your resignation, that you're held in high esteem by the government of Ghana. And I spoke for the government of Ghana.
Why didn't you perhaps ask Mr. Ramsden to perhaps inform Mr. Tom that he regretted that he did not deal with the matter of the racial slur that appeared to be the central issue?
You see, I do not want to get into, first of all, let me make it clear. This was not a government official who made this racial slur. I spoke with the minister and I said to him, if a member of the public complains about an issue, then these matters should be dealt with at the permanent secretary level. And I said to him, it was badly handled. And he accepted it. It was badly handled. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's the end of the matter. We will not tolerate racism in the public sector or anywhere else. And I believe that people need to use the police and the ERC for these matters more. That if anyone were to do something of this nature, you should go to the police or report it. That only in that kind of environment would people stop this nonsense. And it goes against everything we're trying to promote as a country and as a party. And so that is all I want to say on the matter, because we're happy that the gentleman reconsidered his resignation and he is back at work serving his country.
Lastly, Mr. Jagdeo, from me, why has government so far not enacted a modern copyright and intellectual property legislation? We see, for instance, a recent lawsuit having been filed, and a number of artists are now speaking out on this issue. What's stopping the government from passing this legislation?
You know, this is an age-old issue that we've been working at for a long time, and it's not as popular as you would think here. In Guyana, there's a slew of people who believe that that we should have an appropriate to Guyana legislation. I don't want to get into that contentious debate at this stage. A lot of our people don't pay for any content. They, on the internet, on television, on radio. I think they even are in this room here. There may be entities that infringe on copyright, international copyright. So, but I believe our artists should be protected. Our artists should be protected. I hope that we can advance it. Now, we're also part of the WTO, and some countries expect us to, in a new dispensation, they're not going to bring certain types of business here unless we have protection for them. So in the modern era, as we go forward, I think the historic position may have to change. Because you recall, one time I had a consultation, a public consultation when I was president, and a ton of people came to the public consultation and said, oh, you're going to shut down all these free video stores that you're getting, like, you know, the movies and stuff. There's one time that was the only way the only entertainment we had, because everybody used to go to one of these stores and buy 6 of the movies for $100 or $200, and there was a big uproar about it. They said, you're going to shut all of this down. What about the tens of thousands of people? And since when the developed world protects our things? They don't. So I think in the modern era now, we may very well have to update that. And people's income levels have grown now. 2 income levels have grown. And I think they get their content now from more sources that they can actually pay for. Like the online streaming and stuff like that, they already pay for that. At that time, there was very few online streaming platforms. So your movie is either the theater, and we didn't have theaters at that time. Very few theaters, movie theaters. So your movie was a DVD and these pirated cassettes. Now that has evolved. We have modern theaters, we have online streaming platforms. Already a lot of our people pay for that. They would subscribe to like e-network and all of these already. So people have started paying more for content. So I think you should speak with Minister Onesh Waldron about this. I think it's time actually that we start strengthening our platform because the economy is becoming more modern and also we need new types of businesses that would demand copyright protection.
Yeah,
so I think there is time to move.
Yeah, you're looking at it from one side when I'm talking about the protection of local artists and the promotion of their works so that industry grows, whether it be singing, poetry, books, etc. Are you taking that aspect into consideration?
Yeah, well, that was the part that we were in favor of, that we said historically again, that the stores that sell the music in the past on the CDs, that they should not do the local ones, right? And therefore the people must pay for that. So I think all of it, not just even foreign content now, and the local content, the local artists, that we need to evolve the framework to protect them more. So it's not just the local now, which I support strongly. I support protection of local copyright strongly. Historically, I might have had another view because I thought the developed world at that time maybe needs to, we didn't have that, they were not protecting a lot of our stuff or dealing with us. They take our teachers and our nurses that we spend tons of money on. Who's going to pay us back for the training there? We don't get a cent back for training. So my views have evolved, Dennis. Now, my views have evolved over the period.
Marcel Thomas from the Starbuck News. Recently, former Minister of Finance Winston Jordan questioned the funding of the pipeline aspect of the gas to energy project. I wanted to ask you to bring some clarity on that, and if there's any illegality in the sourcing of that funding, meaning that it's coming through any kind of loan or a gentleman's agreement or not. That was one. For phase 2 of the project, which was advertised, same gas to energy, it calls for the private sector investment. Given that phase 1 had this large amount of money to do the stabilization works, is phase 2 going to be on that same, I see it's at 100 acres, is that going to be in that same area that has already been prepared, or would they be required to plug money in to have like separate stabilization works? Yesu Branchalo, has he started working already? And is he based here? Or where is he based, and what has he done to date? And my last question is on former PS May Thomas. Is she still on leave for the Ministry of Labor? And is she being paid?
Yes, so the last question is yes, she's still on leave and she's receiving pay. Branchalo guy, what is he doing to date? You should ask the ministry. Outside of the first meeting that I met him at after the award, and I've not seen him, but that doesn't mean they're not working. The company is not working here. But as I said before, people think there is a project that we awarded. Right now, we did not award a project to this group. What we did, we went out for expressions of interest, a bid project, a RFP, to select a company that can work with Exxon and the government of Guyana to see if we have a project. And that is the difference. Some people believe there is a project that we awarded. We now need to examine the gas reserves, look at the demand, the need for financing, whether there may be 20 billion US dollars that might be needed to develop such a project could be raised, whether part of it should come from the cost bank. What would they need from the government side to make this project feasible, if it is feasible? And is Exxon willing to make that investment? Because if they don't make that investment, they may very well have to give up some of the areas that they found that are that have more gas than oil. So this is exploring the monetization of the gas. We still have a ton of studies to do and billions of dollars to raise, but we're not raising it from the Treasury. We're not getting involved in taking taxpayers' money and putting it into this project. But we want the gas monetized so we can promote further industrialization and we can get a revenue stream from the gas to add to the revenue stream from the oil. So, but for you to find out what's happening in the discussions between the tripartite discussions, the ministry is in those discussions. They must give a report on what's happening there. The phase 2 of the project is, so if you look at the demand profile for power in Guyana, you will see that when we embarked upon this project, we were supplying maybe 150 megawatts of power to the grid, 140 to 150 megawatts of power from GPL to the interconnected system. So we estimated private demand at that time, that is demand not met by the government, but power generated from private people, to be about another 100, maybe and 30 megawatts of power. So if you add the two, you will get to about 270 megawatts of power. That is to satisfy those in the interconnected system. Because with the cheaper power, those who are self-generating would have come onto the grid. So that's 270 megawatts. That will practically use up all the power for the 300 megawatts unit. We have now decided that we want to connect Linden to this grid. That will bring in another 15 to 20 megawatts of power in the future. And the local demand now from GPL has already gone up to over 200 megawatts. That's GPL supply alone. So if you add to the over 200 megawatts that we are now supplying to the interconnected grid because of the rapid growth in demand, and it still keeps growing, by the time that project come on stream, it's estimated that it'll get up to over 230. That's only GPL. If you add private demand to that, and you bring in the Linden demand, you're talking maybe 400 megawatts need already. So we have to start planning for that too. And the way to do so is not, now that we have established the cost structure, by making our own investment, we could easily buy the power now from a private investor at maybe around the same price. So we are generating about maybe 3 to 4 cents per kilowatt hour now. So we anticipate that we will be able, even if they have to pay for the remaining gas, we're not paying for the gas. Okay, so that is only the capital cost. But if an investor now were to invest there to amortize their capital costs and pay for the power at, say, the price at Henry's Hub for the gas, current prices at Henry's Hub, they should be able to supply power competitively, maybe at around 6 cents per kilowatt hour, or even lower, which is still below the 11 cents that we plan to sell it for. And now the current rate is 22 US cents per kilowatt hour. So it's 22 cents now. It will cut it to 50% to about 11 cents per kilowatt hour. But we can now buy power at maybe even with the payment gas, paying for gas. So in the discussions now, when we have the bids coming in, they would, so if they're going to go on the same site, then the price might be a different price, right? The long-term price, and you can do it over a 20-year period. Say the power purchase agreement is a 20-year period. If they're going to take the liquids, then we will have to get a lower price too. If they're giving us the liquids like we are getting in the first instance, that is the cooking gas, etc., then we may have the 6 cents per kilowatt hour. So all of those variables have to be discussed in the negotiations to agree in the power purchase agreement. And they are part, if you look at the bid document, you will see that they mention a lot of these issues. So we have to start now. We can't do like APNU. APNU wants great power. They want stable power, but kill the hydro. Didn't do the gas to energy. No investment in electricity, but wants to supply power to everyone. We are planning for the future, not now alone. You don't want to, as soon as by next year, and the gas to energy comes on stream, another set of demand starts, because the country is growing rapidly. Every one of those hotels, the 9 hotels, will need about 2 megawatts each. Everyone, imagine when your bill drops by half, and people put in more air conditioned systems. Everybody will want ACs in their homes, and they'll buy more appliances and stuff like that. People might migrate to cooking with electricity. So you got to keep abreast of all of these things. That's one thing in the PPP we do a lot. We plan for the future. People don't like that. The APNU people, it boggles their mind. How come these guys could be thinking about that now, and we have one project going? We have to do that. That's how you work. So and the project is not going to be funded from a loan. So that's very clear, not from a loan. But this is very rich of Jordan to keep asking about these things. But you should ask him about some of the things that does he still believe today that the 18 million signing bonus was a gift? I have him saying that. You want me to find it in my phone? All right, does he still believe it was a gift, the 18 million signing bonus? Somebody needs to ask him. And you can ask him today. I gave you some questions. Why he didn't maintain the MPTAB website? How many contracts were bid there in that period? And so, no, it's not illegal and it's not coming from a loan. So the thing is that over a period, we have to, that is why we have to pay back around $50 million per year. It comes out of the proceeds from the selling of the liquids and from the price we pay for electricity. But if the liquids can cover that, the liquids, the sale at historic price might be, this has changed now because the prices have come down. So if we had anticipated from the selling in the past, the liquids alone, the cooking gas, we could have covered the cost payback for the power plant, the NGL facility, and the pipeline. That's why I'm telling you it's feasible. But now, remember, and that if you do that, you pay from the liquids. We're selling power too. So if we sell at 11 cents per kilowatt hour, we have a ton of money coming into the coffers still, and we can pay back for the project from the liquids alone. So even if we have to take a bit more, because we're going to be generating at 4 cents and selling at 11 cents, but the people in Guyana will get their bill cut by half, and they will save over 100 million US per year. So it's good all around. It's good for GPL. GPL will be flush with money, and they can do more expansion, make the system more reliable, etc., without having to come to the Treasury. They would have their own funds, and then also everyone will benefit. So that was how it was done.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Kim King for Oil Now.
Yeah.
Vice President, you said that you are expecting, or that the government is hopeful that by April you're going to be able to have first gas, so the power plant starts working. How soon?
No, Kimal. So let's get this. I said there is going to be a delay. There is a delay now because the site was handed over late. We said that what we believe is justified is a 3 months extension to the contract. We offered that. The company doesn't want that. They want more money, and because Exxon was managing this, they want a bit more money, and they want a longer extension. They've asked for a longer extension. We have an arbitration now taking place. So if we win the arbitration, they would have only by April to deliver this project. They have given a schedule which shows later in the year. That is what Winston Brassington spoke of. But I did not want the public to think that we agree to their schedule. We have only given an approval for 3 months extension. So if we win in the arbitration and they stick with that schedule, then there would be liquidating damages that would be the $11 million, I think, per month.
They give is what they believe to be realistic.
Yes, what they believe should be, they believe that that is their timeline. Okay?
Okay. So my question was, how soon after the operationalization of the plant, whenever that is, can consumers expect that 50% reduction in the cost of power to kick in?
Yeah, well, I don't know if a 1 day or a week or so, but it should happen almost immediately. Should happen almost immediately. Because if the cost, if we're getting all this power in the grid immediately, that means we can turn off a lot of the high cost generating equipment that we have now and substitute this with the new power plant. So almost immediately, the benefit would be seen almost immediately.
It's actually my second question. So there's expected to be, when the gas to energy project comes in, a surplus in generation capacity. So you will shut the HFO plants for the time.
So they go into reserves. If the gas to energy project can meet the demand, and that is we're generating at 4 cents per kilowatt hour there, then every other generating set will go into reserve. Right now, we don't have reserve. Our installed capacity is close to peak demand.
Yeah.
So there is no reserve. So that's why if a unit goes down, you have power outages. But so these reserves now would be there. So just in case you have local issues or something, they'll be maintained and put into reserves. So what if now the demand surpasses the 300 megawatts? We may have to turn on some of these other units back again.
So phase 2 of the gas to energy project, the notice that the government put out didn't give an indication of when the government wants to bring this to fruition. I'm trying to get an understanding of the fact that when I look at GPL's expansion program, there is an assumed startup date for the Amila Falls project of 2029. And of course that depends on when the government can bring that project to fruition.
So 2 years, we anticipate that this could be done in 2 years, the project there. So it depends on when phase 2. Phase 2 can be done in 2 years. So once and that's, we believe, is an outside limit. So we can kick, depending on the date we start, we can kick this in or have it ready in 2 years.
Phase two in a sense makes up for the delay of Amila.
Yeah, yes. The Amila in any case would have produced about 160 something megawatts of power. Probably now with new reconfiguration more. But we may still have to go, we'll still have to go with an Amila project, the hydro, to maintain the renewable energy mix. And trust me, our demand, the pace at which we are going and changing in this country, after phase 2, we probably need more power in another couple of years. The growth in demand for power is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Every single day we see it climbing all the time. Just like we're just ordered about, well, we went out to tender for about 80,000 street lights, because that was been a big demand for people in the communities in different places. They're now going to be procured over the next several months, and the installation would start around the country. 80,000 street lights. So for the country, every time we go to a community meeting, people say, what about street lights? Would it help with crime? People come home late from work, all of that sort of thing. And that alone is a major demand for additional power. So the country will get there.
Okay, so in discussing phase 2, the president has talked about the potential for power export to our neighbors, Suriname, northern Brazil.
No, not from this project. This project here, I think would be, we'd use every bit of it, all the power. That's what we are talking about, that should we be able to move with the new project monetizing the gas, we may be able to do a major exports to northern Brazil and Suriname. This one, if we have excess, I think we can sell it easily to Suriname or any other place, but I don't think they will have any excess power, the ones at the pace at which we're growing.
Isn't the power export thing, it seems like very aspirational at this point, given the number of studies and infrastructure that's going to have to be put in place to establish that corridor?
Huge demand. There's a huge demand from very serious companies that were part of President Lula's delegation, who and had discussions when, even with Bolsonaro there, they were discussing this about the energy corridor. Northern Brazil needs a lot of power and reliable power. They used to buy from Venezuela. So the demand is there. And considering the length, Brazil has done this, the transmitted power over long distances very, very feasibly. So I don't see this, the infrastructure to move the power, as being the humbug in this case. I don't see it as a humbug.
Okay, finally on Kanji and Kaichor, you said that the second relinquishment for Kanji should have been done by now. What has to happen now in terms of that?
The ministry has to do its work.
And the force majeure had pushed that relinquishment from last year to this year. So just for clarity, the expected 2026 expiry date of the contract
is inclusive of the force majeure.
Okay, and the force majeure, that also applied for Kaichor block as well?
Yes, I think both blocks got.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Jagdeo, Cordell Jones, Livewire News. Could you share your thoughts on David Patterson's former PRO, Ms. Davina Bagat, who's joined the team at Kaichor News and is seemingly trying to rebrand the former public infrastructure minister?
I don't want to say that their sympathy is there, but I feel that the questions from Kaichor News were softball questions to Patterson, and I don't want to get into the personality business, but it looks like the questions were shared. It's some like softball kind of nonsense, you know, and the desire to make them look good all the time. AFC with their wishy-washy position and hiding the big set of skeleton, the stinking linen in their closet, you know, about the 2016 agreement, and trying to paint everybody with responsibility when they're the bunch that did all of this wickedness, including Pato with his tenure in office. Sticky finger Pato. Sticky finger, they used to call sticky finger Pato.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo, and as Williams Kaichor News. Sir, earlier you spoke about the subsidy being put into power regeneration. Well, we know that the money is coming from taxpayers. How do you reconcile that this subsidizing of the electricity is benefiting foreigners and foreign companies who are some of the biggest consumers of our electricity? And can you say, why doesn't the government demand that they pay a before subsidy sort of rate?
So we can have people come and say we'll charge two electricity rates now, one for Guyanese and one for foreigners, and the foreigners must come and bring a document every week and show whether they're foreigners or not, or every Guyanese will have to then prove that they're Guyanese to access the subsidy, the electricity subsidy. Administrative nightmare, corruption. because the same foreign companies will put the meters in the name of a Guyanese person. Trust me. We've seen that too much. These targeted subsidies is a nightmare to administer. And the moment you start making exceptions, when we got into office, people were getting old age pension based on a means test. So guess what happened? Only if you're earning less than this per month, and everybody was earning $16 per month at that time. In the 90s, we abolished the mean test. So if you reach 65, you get the old age pension. Not that some of the rich people will get it too, but it's administratively easier to do that, and you don't have the corruption or an army of public officers now sitting in a ministry now. You got to pay them to decide who falls below the test, who should get the old age pension or not. People start going in, bribery, etc. So it's better sometimes when you do public administration to look at the value of the subsidy and do it across the board. It avoids you having to put in place complex administrative apparatus that can become corrupt. And that's why you move to across the board systems. So too here.
Also, sir, can you say if the signing of the contract for the third audit into Exxon's expenses is still on the government's agenda for this month?
Yeah, well, they went through a bid. I think they selected the company, and I'm not sure that it went to the cabinet. I may have gone past the cabinet already because I've not gone to the cabinet in a while, and but they had, as far as I'm concerned, they had identified the company, and once it goes past cabinet, then there should have been the contract would have been signed, and I think it may have been they may have already signed it. So just check on that.
Hi, good afternoon. Tamika Garnett from the Guyana Times. My first question relates to what you mentioned about meeting with the PS and some of the procurement issues that were discovered. You mentioned a particular person that was supposed to be evaluating the bid documents but did not, and they were just doing the reports based on the amounts they saw. Can you say what disciplinary actions was taken against that person, and what across-the-board disciplinary action does the government take when they find persons involved in these, even if it was over laziness on their part, not just that they were corrupt, but...
So in that case was recently discovered after people made some complaint, came to Freedom House and complained. And we discovered it because a lot of people come here to complain. And I've been advocating that he should be fired. The person should be fired. I spoke to the minister. That's not a simple dereliction of duty. That's a grave dereliction of duty. You can't be given a responsibility to discharge. You get paid from the treasury and then just go, to do it properly, you have to read the documents and compare the bids, and then just go and write a report on the basis of what was announced at the bid opening. I've advocated that, so I hope I'm going to follow up on it. And I know in the two cases where engineers have lost their jobs because of colluding with people on the ground in the projects to inflate bills and to approve shoddy work or work not done, and they have lost their jobs.
Okay, a continuation.
So I think it should happen more in government. People should face responsibility. And one of them will go to Nigel Hughes. Next thing you'd hear, oh, the PPP firing people just like that. One may go to Nigel Hughes soon.
Okay, a continuation of that question. The Auditor General recently laid the 2023 report, well, not late. Well, you hand it over to the speaker, and it will be probably late in Parliament when the recess concludes. To what extent will the government be paying attention to that report in trying to met out disciplinary actions to persons involved at the various ministries and different levels, and they're involved in the procurement process, and we see issues in even projects handed over with shoddy work and such?
Sure. So there was when we were we're making changes to the Constitution and also to legislation in the past. Public officers used to complain that when they submit explanations to the Auditor General, those explanations are not fully carried. So there is a requirement also by the Auditor General to publish their explanations given by the public officers, so that the public could read the Auditor General's report, and then they could read the explanations given by some public officers, because they don't believe in a report that has to be more concise, that some of the crucial parts of the explanations get missing. So we built that into the system. So I hope that both will be read together. That's one. I know that the president, since I was president, but also President Ali, has instructed the Minister of Finance, the cabinet members, and the Secretary to the Treasury to take every ministry and the comments made by the Auditor General and to give explanations to those, even before the report have been finalized. And so I expect them to have good answers to those, because that's an instruction from the cabinet and the president, that the ministers and their permanent secretaries and the ministries have to give explanations. So, and if they don't have proper explanations, they don't have to answer for it. I don't have a problem with that. So this is how it must be read. You know?
You mentioned the cervical cancer program and the spectacle vouchers. I know those were catered for in the budget, but there was also a $7 billion that was for the cost of living measures. Can you say what programs, if any, has utilized this money, what amount is remaining, and what programs the government might be implementing in the next 3 months to utilize the remainder of the money?
So we, as far as I know, because I don't think any specific announcements have been made on this, but as far as I know, the money is still in the budget, not being utilized as yet for specific interventions on cost of living. So I know we have a ton of ideas, and I know the president will speak at the opening of the new session of the Parliament. So look out for more policy measures from the president, announcement of some policy measures when he addresses the opening of the new Parliament. When we come out of recess, not the opening, the new Parliament, but when we come out of recess.
Good afternoon, Renee Sambach with Kaiser News. Vice President Jagdeo, is there a government policy to not release the names of domestic lenders in the 2024 mid-year
Domestic
lenders?
Lenders?
In the 2024 mid-year report, the government mentioned the names of the external lenders, but not the domestic lenders.
Like, what do you mean, like
where we borrow the
lenders?
money from locally?
No, there shouldn't be a problem. A lot of it comes through T-bills. So it's a central bank function. So normally it comes from T-bills or a central bank overdraft. So those are the primary sources of borrowing locally. T-bills and the central bank overdraft. All right, thank you.